Once in a quiet English village, wrapped in endless green hills and whispers of wind, there lived a young man named William. From the outside his life seemed simple, almost peaceful. He was kind. He worked harder than most. He helped anyone who needed it, even when no one asked. But beneath that calm surface, something inside him was slowly breaking. William had a problem, one that no one could see. Yet it haunted him every single day. He could never truly understand people. Not their words, but their intentions. His boss would look him in the eyes, smile warmly and say, "Excellent work, William." And just when William felt seen, appreciated, he would be dismissed without warning. The following week, his friends would laugh with him, make promises, swear they'd visit. But the days passed, then weeks, silence, excuses, disappearance, and his neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, always so sweet, always so polite, would admire his garden in the daylight, while under the cover of darkness, she quietly destroyed it, poisoning the very flowers she had praised just hours before. Little by little, William began to question everything. Every smile felt like a mask, every kind word a possible lie. He started to feel like a stranger in his own life, lost, alone, confused. Each night, lying in bed, staring into the emptiness above him, one question echoed in his mind, like a curse he couldn't escape. Why can't I see the truth? Why do people say one thing, but mean something completely different? And maybe, just maybe, you felt that too. That unsettling feeling when something doesn't add up. When words sound right, but your instincts scream otherwise. When you realize not everyone is who they pretend to be. One freezing winter evening, as the cold wrapped around the village, like a silent warning, William sat alone by his fireplace. The flames flickered, casting shadows that danced across the walls, twisting, shifting, almost alive. He stared into the fire, lost in thought, as if searching for answers hidden within the flames. Then suddenly, knock. A sharp sound cut through the silence. William froze. Another knock. Slower this time, heavier. He stood up, his heart beating faster than it should. Something felt off as he opened the door. A gust of icy wind rushed inside. And there, standing in the darkness, was a man unlike anyone he had ever seen. An old figure, tall, unmoving, wrapped in a dark cloak etched with strange, almost hypnotic symbols. His long silver beard swayed gently in the cold air, and his eyes, deep, unreadable, seemed to look straight through William, as if he could see every hidden thought. "Good evening, young man," the stranger said softly, a faint smile forming on his lips. But there was something about that smile, something William couldn't explain, something that made his chest tighten, as if for the first time in his life, he was standing face to face with the truth. "I am Professor Edmund," the old man said, his voice calm, yet carrying a strange weight. "A wanderer and a lifelong student of human nature. And you, William?" He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I have been observing you for quite some time." A chill ran down William's spine. "You have a rare kindness," Edmund continued, stepping inside as if he already belonged there. "But that kindness has made you blind. Blind to what hides behind people's words." William's breath caught. "How? How could you possibly know that?" A soft, knowing chuckle escaped the old man's lips. "Because, my boy, most people walk through life asleep. They hear words and mistake them for truth." He leaned closer, his voice lowering to almost a whisper. "But I don't, and if you're willing, I can teach you to see what others cannot." William hesitated for only a moment. Then something inside him, something desperate for answers, took over. He stepped aside and invited the stranger in. Moments later, they sat by the fire. The room glowed with warmth, but the air between them felt charged, like something important was about to unfold. William placed a cup of tea into the old man's hands, along with a piece of bread. Professor Edmund didn't touch them. Instead, he fixed his gaze on William. "Tell me," he began slowly, "when someone smiles at you, do you believe that smile?" William answered without thinking. "Yes, a smile means they're happy. Doesn't it?" The professor's lips curved slightly, but this time, it wasn't warmth, it was pity. "No," he said quietly. "That's the first illusion. William frowned, a smile. Edmund continued, his voice, steady and precise, can hide jealousy, resentment, even hatred. It is easiest mask a human being can wear. The fire cracked loudly between them. Listen carefully, William, he said, leaning forward. If you truly want to understand people, you must stop listening to what they say. William's heart began to race. Tomorrow morning, the professor continued. Go to the village square, sit where you can see everyone. But no one notices you, and then observe. Observe what? William asked. Everything they try to hide. The professor's eyes darkened. Watch their eyes when they speak. Watch their hands when they lie. Watch their feet when they want to leave. Pay attention to discomfort, to hesitation, to the moments that don't match their words. He paused, letting the silence sink in. That is where the truth lives. The next morning arrived cold and quiet. William made his way to the village square, his mind restless, his senses sharper than ever before. He found a wooden bench near the fountain and sat down, trying to appear ordinary, while inside he felt anything but. At first, everything seemed the same. People talking, laughing, smiling, but this time, William wasn't listening, he was watching. Really watching. Then he saw him. Mr. Charles, the wealthiest merchant in the village. He stood near the market stalls, speaking to a poor farmer. His voice was warm, his smile wide, his hand resting reassuringly on the farmer's shoulder. Of course, my friend, Mr. Charles said kindly. I'll lend you the money, don't worry about a thing. To anyone else it looked genuine. But not to William, not anymore. Something felt wrong. William leaned forward slightly, focusing. Mr. Charles was smiling, yes. But his eyes, they weren't calm. They kept shifting left, right, scanning the crowd, as if searching for something or someone. His fingers tapped restlessly against his walking stick. Tap, 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 faster than normal. And then, the moment the farmer turned his back, the smile disappeared, not slowly. Instantly, as if it had never been real to begin with. William's chest tightened. A realization hit him sharp and undeniable. That kindness, it was an act. A performance. Mr. Charles wasn't generous. He wasn't sincere, he was calculating. And for the first time in his life, William wasn't fooled. He wasn't being kind, he was performing kindness. Not for the farmer, not out of generosity, but for the eyes watching him, judging him, believing in the illusion he carefully crafted. And suddenly everything made sense. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone who speaks gently in public, but turns cold the moment no one is looking. Someone whose kindness feels real. Until you realize, it was never meant for you in the first place. William didn't move. His eyes stayed sharp, focused. Because now he understood what to look for. Then he noticed her, Clara, sitting alone on a wooden bench, a book resting quietly in her hands. She looked peaceful, distant, almost protected by her silence. A man approached her, smiling, eager to talk. Oh, it's so nice to meet you, Clara said politely. Her voice soft, her expression calm. To most people, it would seem like a pleasant interaction. But William saw something deeper. Something invisible to everyone else. Clara's body had already made its decision. She had suddenly turned away from the man, just enough to create distance. Her arms folded tightly over the book like a shield. Her fingers gripped the edges, slightly tense, and her eyes betrayed everything. They glanced toward the exit, once. Then again, quick. Almost instinctive. She was looking for a way out. Her words said, I'm happy to talk. But her body whispered something completely different. Please leave me alone. William felt a quiet shock run through him. That was it. That was the truth. Words could lie effortlessly. But the body always told the truth. Then, something even more unsettling caught his attention. A group of men stood near the market, laughing loudly, their voices echoing across the square. They joked, teased each other, slapped shoulders like old friends. And in the center of it all was Robert. The loudest one, the funniest one, the most confident one. He laughed harder than anyone else. His voice rose above the rest. He told story after story, joke after joke, never letting the energy drop, never allowing silence to settle. To anyone watching, he was the happiest man there. But William wasn't just watching anymore. He was seeing. Something felt off. Robert's laughter was too loud. Too forced, too constant, as if he was trying to drown something out. Then, for a brief moment, the group fell silent. Just a second. But that was enough. Robert's face changed. The smile faded, not dramatically, not obviously, but just enough for someone paying attention. And underneath it, there it was, exhaustion. A flicker of sadness, something heavy hidden. Quickly buried again, the moment the laughter returned. William's chest tightened. A thought formed in his mind, slow, unsettling, undeniable. Why does the happiest man look the saddest? When no one is watching. That evening, as the sun sank, and shadows stretched across the village, William returned home, his mind racing. His perception forever altered. He found Professor Edmund waiting by the fire. As if he had never left, William shared everything. Every detail, every movement, every realization. When he finished, silence filled the room. Then the professor nodded slowly. A faint smile forming on his lips. "Good," he said softly. "Very good, William." His eyes gleamed in the firelight. "You're no longer just looking at people. You're beginning to see them." He reached for the teapot, pouring slowly, deliberately. "But what you've learned so far," he continued, his voice lowering, "is only the surface." William leaned forward, his heart beating faster. Because something told him what came next would change everything. "Now, Professor," Edmund said quietly, "let me show you the deeper truths." "Truth no. 1. Professor Edmund said slowly, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The louder the confidence, the deeper the doubt. William frowned slightly. The professor's eyes flickered toward the fire. "Think about Robert." William's mind immediately replayed the scene. The laughter, the energy, the constant need to be seen. "Do you really believe a man who is secure needs to prove it every second?" Edmund asked. William hesitated. "No, exactly." The professor continued. "Robert doesn't laugh because he's happy. He laughs because he's afraid of silence. Because in silence, he meets himself." A heavy pause filled the room. "He fears being forgotten," Edmund added quietly. "So he makes sure no one ever stops noticing him." William felt something click inside his mind. "So his confidence," he said slowly, "isn't real. It's a mask," the professor confirmed. "And like all masks, it exists to hide something fragile underneath." The fire cracked again. "Truth no. 2, Edmund continued, his tone sharper now, more intense. "When someone constantly criticizes others, they are revealing a war within themselves." William's eyes narrowed slightly. A memory surfaced. Henry. He murmured his coworker. Always complaining, always pointing out flaws. Always calling others lazy. But William remembered something else. Henry missed deadlines, avoided responsibility, made excuses. Henry attacks laziness. William said, his voice lowering. Because he's afraid people will see his own. A slow smile appeared on the professor's face. "Now you're thinking." He leaned back slightly. "This is called projection." He explained, "We throw our insecurities onto others. Because facing them within ourselves is too painful." His gaze sharpened. "So, the next time you meet someone who judges everyone around them," he paused, "ask yourself, what are they trying to hide?" The room grew quieter, darker. "Truth no. 3, the professor said. His voice, now almost a whisper. "Listen not to words, but to silence." William leaned in. "When you ask someone a simple question," Edmund continued, "and they hesitate, pause too long, avoid your eyes, or rush to change the subject." He tapped the table lightly. "You've just touched the truth they don't want you to see." William felt a chill. "Thomas," he said under his breath, he remembered it clearly. "Are you happy?" he had asked. And Thomas paused, looked away. Forced a quick answer. "Yeah, of course, why wouldn't I be?" Then immediately changed the topic. At the time, it seemed normal. Now, it felt painfully obvious he wasn't happy at all. William whispered. The professor nodded. "People rehearse lies," he said, "but they can't rehearse silence." Then the professor leaned forward. Closer than before, and for the first time, His voice carried something heavier, something darker. Truth number 4. William's heart began to pound. The person who needs to control everything. A pause is the one who feels most out of control inside. William didn't speak, he just listened. Control, Edmund continued, is not strength, it is fear. Dressed as authority, his eyes locked onto William's. When someone tries to control every detail, every decision, every person around them, he lowered his voice. It's because their inner world is chaos. William swallowed. A strange realization crept into his mind. How many people, he thought, are pretending to be strong, just to hide how broken they feel? The fire burned lower now. The shadows in the room grew longer, and William realized something unsettling. The world hadn't changed, people hadn't changed. Only one thing had changed, he could finally see. They try to control everything. Professor Edmund continued, his voice steady but heavy with meaning. Every detail, every conversation, every outcome. He paused, letting the words sink in. Not because they are powerful, but because they are afraid. William listened in silence. Chaos terrifies them, the professor went on. Uncertainty feels like danger. So they tighten their grip on everything around them. Because control is the only thing that makes them feel safe. A memory surfaced in William's mind. My aunt, he said slowly. He could see it clearly now. The perfectly timed family dinners, the strict schedules, the frustration. Even anger when something small went wrong. She's always trying to control everything. William murmured, then he stopped. A realization hit him, quiet but powerful. She's not bossy, he whispered. She's scared. The professor nodded, a faint, approving smile appearing. Now, you're not just seeing the truth, he said softly, you're seeing it with compassion. Over the next few days, something inside William began to shift. He didn't just look at people anymore. He studied them carefully. Patiently and slowly, the world started to reveal itself. When his boss smiled and said, great work, but avoided eye contact, William felt it instantly. Something was wrong, bad news was coming. When his friend promised, I'll visit soon, but kept checking his watch once, twice, 3 times, William already knew he wasn't coming. When Mrs. Thompson admired his roses, her voice sweet as ever, but her eyes stayed cold. Distant, untouched by her smile. William didn't need proof anymore. He understood, not everything spoken was real. But then something unexpected happened. Something that changed everything. One evening, standing alone in his small room, William faced the mirror for a long moment. He said nothing, then quietly, almost reluctantly, he asked himself, what mask am I wearing? The question lingered in the air, and for the first time, he didn't look away. Memories surfaced, moments he had ignored, truths he had buried. I'm fine, he would say again and again. Even when he felt empty inside, he smiled when he wanted to break. He agreed when he didn't believe a word. He avoided conflict not because he was kind, but because he was afraid. Afraid of rejection, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of standing alone. William's chest tightened, because suddenly, he saw it clearer than ever before. He wasn't just surrounded by people wearing masks. He was one of them. And in that moment, the final lesson revealed itself. Not as words, but as truth. Reading people was never about exposing them. It was never about judging their flaws, or proving them wrong. It was about understanding deep, uncomfortable human understanding. Because behind every forced smile, every harsh judgment, every loud laugh, every need for control, there was something else, fear, insecurity, loneliness, pain. The professor's voice echoed in his mind. Everyone is hiding something, William. Because everyone is scared. And for the first time in his life, William didn't feel confused anymore. He didn't feel angry. He didn't feel lost. He felt something far more powerful. He understood. Everyone is hiding something. Not always, because they want to deceive you, but because they are trying to survive. In a world that rewards strength and punishes vulnerability, people learn early how to protect themselves. So they build masks carefully. Quietly, perfectly. A smile to hide pain, confidence to hide insecurity, control to hide fear, and the truth is, Almost everyone you meet is wearing one. Before leaving the village, Professor Edmund came to William one final time. The night was still, the air felt heavier than usual, as if even the silence knew this was goodbye. "William," the professor said, his voice calm but firm, "you've learned quickly. Faster than most." William listened closely. "But there's one last truth you must never forget." He stepped closer, his eyes locking onto William's. "The clearer you see others," he said slowly, "the clearer you will begin to see yourself." That William felt his breath tighten. "And when that happens," Edmund continued, "when you stop hiding from your own reflection." A pause, "you become free." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then something changed. William smiled. But this time there was no mask. No hesitation, no fear. Just truth. "Thank you," he said quietly, "I won't forget." The old man studied him for a second, then gave a small nod without another word. He turned, stepped into the darkness, and disappeared as if he had never been there at all. From that night on, William was no longer the same. He still noticed the masks people wore. He still saw the lies behind polite words, the fear behind confidence, the pain behind laughter. But something inside him had shifted. He didn't judge anymore, he understood. And that changed everything. When people spoke to him, he listened not just to their words, but to what they couldn't say. When they smiled, he looked deeper. When they avoided truth, he felt it. When they hid, he gave them space instead of pressure. And slowly, something incredible happened. People began to trust him. Not because he exposed them, but because he didn't. They felt safe around him. Seen without being judged. Understood without being questioned. Because William didn't just read people anymore. He saw them truly, completely. So now, let me ask you something. Now that you understand these truths, how will you see people? Will you use this knowledge as a weapon to judge? To expose? To feel superior? Or will you use it as a gift to understand? To connect? To see beyond the surface? Take a moment, think about it. Because the most difficult person you will ever try to understand is not a stranger, not a friend. Not even the people closest to you. It's the one staring back at you in the mirror. And until you learn to read that person, you will never truly see anyone else.